The warning lights painted Captain Marcus Reed's weathered face in harsh crimson as his cargo hauler, the Stellar Wanderer, shuddered through Verdania's upper atmosphere. 20 years of interstellar trading had taught him to read the signs, and every instinct screamed that this emergency landing would be his last. Navigation shot, engines failing, he muttered, wrestling with controls that responded like lead weights. Through the viewport, an endless carpet of emerald jungle rushed toward him, broken only by silver threads of rivers catching the light of Verdonia's twin suns. The impact came with the sound of tearing metal and splintering wood. Marcus felt his harness cut into his chest as the ship careened through the canopy, massive branches reaching through the hull like grasping fingers. When the grinding, screaming, chaos finally stopped, silence settled over the wreckage like a shroud. Consciousness returned slowly, accompanied by the symphony of an alien forest. Marcus groaned, tasting blood as he unbuckled himself from the pilot's seat. His left shoulder ached, but nothing seemed broken. Through the jagged hole in the ship's side, warm, humid air carried scents he couldn't identify, sweet florals, mixed with rich earth and something that reminded him of cinnamon. "Well, Marcus," he said aloud, needing to hear a familiar voice, even his own. "You've been in worse spots." It was a lie, but it helped. His emergency kit had survived the crash. Water purifier, medical supplies, protein bars, and his father's old projectile pistol, a relic, but reliable. A communication array lay in twisted ruins, and the quantum drive had cracked its housing. Without parts and a proper repair facility, he wasn't leaving this planet anytime soon. Outside, Verdania revealed itself as a world painted in impossible colors. Trees with silver-blue bark stretched toward a sky tinged with lavender, their leaves shimmering with an opalescent quality that hurt to look at directly. Flowers the size of dinner plates nodded from vines thick as his wrist, their petals seeming to pulse with inner light. Strange calls echoed through the canopy, not quite bird, not quite mammal, but hauntingly beautiful. Marcus set up a basic camp in a small clearing near the wreck, using salvaged hull plates as windbreaks and his emergency beacon as a signal fire. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, when he first heard it, a melody unlike anything in his experience. Not quite singing, not quite the wind through leaves, but something that made his chest tight with an emotion he couldn't name. The sound stopped the moment he stood up. "Hello?" he called, his hand moving instinctively to his weapon. "I'm stranded here. I mean no harm to you or your world." Silence stretched for long minutes. Then, like a dream given form, she emerged from between two massive ferns. Marcus had traveled to 17 different worlds, met dozens of alien species, but nothing had prepared him for her. Humanoid in shape, but clearly not human, she moved with a fluid grace that seemed to bend the very air around her. Her skin held a soft luminescence, like moonlight on water, and her hair fell in waves of deep forest green, shot through with silver. She wore nothing but paint-intricate patterns in blues and golds that seemed to shift and flow across her skin. Most striking were her eyes. Large, luminous, and the color of spring leaves, they regarded him with curiosity rather than fear. She tilted her head, studying him with the intensity of someone cataloging a fascinating new species of flower. "You're beautiful," Marcus whispered before he could stop himself. She smiled a radiant expression that transformed her already lovely features into something that made his breath catch. When she spoke, her voice carried the musical quality he'd heard earlier. "Sky traveler," she said in accented but clear standard galactic. "You fall from stars." Marcus blinked in surprise. "You speak standard?" "Trade tongues," she replied, moving closer with that same liquid grace. "Your people come before. Many seasons past. I learned from sky voices." She gestured upward, and Marcus realized she meant communication transmissions. I'm Marcus, he said, placing a hand over his heart in the universal gesture of introduction. Zara, she replied, mimicking the gesture. Her fingers were longer than human normal, ending in delicate points, and when she touched her chest, the painted patterns there seemed to brighten momentarily. Your ship is broken, Zara observed, looking past him to the wreckage. It wasn't a question. Very broken, Marcus confirmed. I'm afraid I'm going to be your uninvited guest for a while. Zara's head tilted again, and he caught a glimpse of pointed ears through her flowing hair. Guest implies invitation withheld. Forest welcomes all who respect her gifts. She moved closer, close enough that he could see the patterns on her skin were actually composed of tiny, living organisms that glowed with bioluminescent light. You're hurt, she said, reaching toward the dried blood on his forehead. Marcus started to pull back, then stopped. Something in her manner, gentle, concerned, utterly without malice, made him trust her. Her fingertips were cool against his skin, and where she touched, a subtle warmth spread, easing the ache in his head. How did you, he began, but she pressed a finger to his lips, the universal gesture for silence. Rest now, Zara said. Tomorrow we speak of broken skyboats and healing. Tonight, Forest sings you to sleep. As if summoned by her words, the jungle around them came alive with a gentle chorus of night sounds. Not the threatening cacophony he'd expected, but something soothing, almost lullaby-like. Marcus found his eyelids growing heavy despite his circumstances. Will you be here in the morning? He asked, fighting sleep. Zara smiled, settling gracefully beside his improvised shelter. Forest does not abandon sky traveler who falls seeking stars. As Marcus drifted off, he could swear he saw her skin's luminescence pulse in rhythm with the jungle's night song, as if she were part of some vast, living symphony he was only beginning to understand. His last conscious thought was that perhaps crashing on this impossible world might be the best thing that had ever happened to him. The patterns on Zara's skin glowed softly as she watched the sleeping human, her mind already working on how to help him repair his vessel. But deep in her heart, a small voice whispered that perhaps she didn't want him to leave too quickly. There was something about this sky traveler that called to parts of herself she hadn't known existed. Dawn on Verdania arrived not with harsh light, but with a gradual symphony of color that painted the jungle canopy in shifting hues of gold and coral. Marcus awoke to find Zara sitting cross-legged beside a small, smokeless fire, weaving something intricate from flexible vines. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin had faded to a subtle shimmer in the morning light, but her presence still seemed to make the very air around her dance. Morning, beautiful, he said, stretching muscles stiff from sleeping on the ground. Zara looked up, her spring-green eyes catching the filtered sunlight. Sun greeting, Marcus Sky Traveler. She held up her weaving a complex pattern that seemed to shift and flow even as he watched. Dream catcher for peaceful sleep. Forest. Spirits whisper much in darkness. You made that for me? Marcus sat up, touched by the gesture. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, incorporating what looked like living moss and tiny flowers that still bloomed despite being woven into the design. Forest provides, I shape, Zara said simply, is way of my people. We give form to nature's gifts. She set the dream catcher aside and moved to tend the fire. You hunger? I prepare morning feast. Marcus's stomach chose that moment to growl audibly, making Zara laugh, a sound like water flowing over crystal stones. I take that as yes, he said, grinning. What followed was unlike any meal Marcus had experienced in 2 decades of traveling the galaxy. Zara gathered fruits that changed color when touched, roots that steamed when exposed to air, and leaves that dissolved into a honey-sweet liquid when chewed. Everything was fresh, vibrant, and seemed to energize him in ways processed ship rations never had. This is incredible, Marcus said, biting into a fruit that tasted like a cross between mango and starlight, if starlight had a flavor. How do you know it's safe to eat? Zara placed her palm against the bark of a nearby tree, and Marcus watched in fascination as the patterns on her skin brightened, seeming to communicate with similar patterns that appeared on the tree's surface. Forest speaks to those who listen. Each plant, each creature has voice, tells it its nature. You can actually communicate with them? Marcus leaned forward, his trader's instincts recognizing something extraordinary when he saw it. Not speak as we speak, Zara explained, her expression growing thoughtful as she searched for the right words in Standard Galactic. More like feeling sharing. I touch living thing, understand its essence. Happy plant gives sweet fruit. Sad plant needs healing touch. She demonstrated by touching a wilted flower near her feet. Under her fingers, the petals straightened and began to glow with renewed vitality. Marcus shook his head in wonder. Where I come from, people would call that magic. Magic? Zara repeated the unfamiliar word, testing its sound. Power that can't be explained by science or technology, Marcus said, though I'm starting to think the universe is full of things we just don't understand yet. Zara's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Tell Zara of Sky Traveler's world. What is ... technology? The next several hours passed in a fascinating exchange. Marcus showed Zara his portable devices, the water purifier that made her gasp in amazement, the medical scanner that she examined with the intensity of a scholar studying ancient texts, the holographic star charts that made her eyes wide with wonder. So many worlds, she breathed, watching the three-dimensional display of local star systems. So many places where sky travelers live. Millions of worlds, Marcus confirmed. Some covered in ice, others nothing but desert. Some where the gravity is so light you can jump over buildings, others where the air itself glows with energy. Like Zara? She held up her hand, watching the bioluminescent patterns pulse gently under her skin. Exactly like you, Marcus said softly, struck by the parallel. You'd fit right in among the luminary of Praxis 7. In return, Zara began teaching Marcus about her world's wonders. She showed him how certain vines could be woven to create cloth that was stronger than synthetic fibers, how specific combinations of plants could heal wounds or provide energy, how the very trees could be coaxed to grow in patterns that created natural shelters. Your people, Marcus said as they walked through a grove where the trees had grown into spiraling patterns that created natural bridges and platforms. They're master bioengineers. Engineer? Zara struggled with the compound word. They shape living things to serve purposes, like you do with these trees. But they do it through understanding the deepest patterns of life itself. Zara nodded eagerly. Yes. Ancient ones teach us to sing with forest song, to dance with life patterns. But her expression grew sad, many ancient songs forgotten. Zara knows only small portion of great melody. What happened to the others? Marcus asked gently. Sky fire came many seasons past, Zara said, looking up through the canopy toward the sky. Not good sky travelers like Marcus. These ones took without asking, burned without purpose. Many of my people went to deep forest, to hidden places. Some went to star sleep in sacred groves. Others ... She shrugged, a gesture full of old pain. Others walked beyond song's reach. Marcus felt a pang of guilt for his own species' history of exploitation. I'm sorry, Zara. Not all of us are like that. She turned to him, her luminous eyes studying his face with that intense curiosity he was beginning to love. Zara knows. Marcus Sky Traveler has gentle hands, peaceful heart. Forest whispers this truth. Their eyes met and held. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with Verdania's tropical climate. Without thinking, he reached out to touch her face. Zara didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into his touch, and where his fingers contacted her skin, her bioluminescent patterns brightened in swirling spirals. "Your touch makes Zara's skin sing," she whispered. "Your presence makes my heart sing," Marcus replied, meaning it completely. They were interrupted by a sound that made Zara's head snap up in alarm, a deep, rumbling call that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The patterns on her skin shifted from gentle blue-white to urgent amber. "What is that?" Marcus asked, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. "Forest Guardian," Zara said, but she was smiling now. "Kelvith comes to meet Sky Traveler." From between the massive trees came a creature that defied easy description. Roughly the size of an elephant, but covered in what looked like living moss and flowers. It moved with surprising grace on 6 trunk-like legs. Its head was vaguely feline, with enormous eyes that held ancient wisdom, and from its forehead grew a crown of crystalline formations that chimed melodically with each step. Marcus froze, but Zara stepped forward fearlessly, placing both hands on the creature's massive muzzle. The exchange that followed was beyond anything Marcus had witnessed. Patterns of light flowed between Zara and the Guardian, a conversation conducted in bioluminescence and gentle musical tones. Finally, Zara turned back to Marcus, her face radiant with joy. "Kelvith says Marcus Sky Traveler has good spirit scent. He offers gift of forest knowledge." She gestured toward the creature, who had lowered its great head in what was unmistakably an invitation. "What kind of gift?" Marcus asked, approaching carefully. "Touch forehead crystal," Zara instructed. "Receive memory sharing of forest wisdom." Marcus hesitated only briefly before placing his palm against the largest crystal formation. The world exploded into sensation not painful, but overwhelming. Suddenly he could feel the pulse of life throughout the entire jungle, sense the network of root systems connecting tree to tree, understand the complex relationships between predator and prey, symbiote and host. For a brief, shining moment, he was part of something vast and interconnected, a single note in a planetary symphony. When the contact ended, Marcus staggered, tears streaming down his face. I can feel them all," he whispered. "Everything's connected. Everything's alive and aware." Zara caught his arm, steadying him. Now Marcus understands why Zara cannot leave forest easily. To break connection causes great pain. The Guardian rumbled contentedly and moved away, leaving them alone in the grove. Marcus looked at Zara with new eyes, seeing not just a beautiful woman, but the living embodiment of an entire world's wisdom. "How can I ask you to give up all this?" he said, gesturing to the magnificent forest around them. Zara stepped closer, her hand finding his. Perhaps question is not what Zara gives up, but what both discover together. Her skin began to glow more brightly where their hands touched. Marcus shows Zara stars. Zara shows Marcus forest ways. Maybe together we find new song to sing. As if in response to her words, the jungle around them seemed to pulse with gentle light, and Marcus realized that his feelings for this extraordinary woman were becoming as vast and interconnected as the forest itself. 3 days had passed since Marcus's communion with the Forest Guardian, and each sunrise found him more deeply entwined with both Zara and Verdania itself. He could now sense the subtle moods of plants, feel the underground networks that connected the great trees, and understand the complex relationships that kept the jungle ecosystem in perfect balance. "You learn quickly," Zara observed, as they walked along a path that seemed to form itself beneath their feet, roots shifting and vines parting to create a natural walkway. "Most sky travelers cannot hear forest song even after many seasons." Marcus smiled, watching the way her hair caught the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy. She had woven small, luminescent flowers into the green-silver strands, creating a crown of living light. "I have an excellent teacher." The compliment made her patterns glow brighter, and Marcus felt his heart skip at the sight. Every day, he discovered new ways she was beautiful. The graceful arch of her neck when she listened to the trees whisper, the way her eyes sparkled when she laughed, the gentle strength in her hands as she shaped living things to her will. "Today, I show you sacred place," Zara said, her voice taking on a reverent tone. "Place of great memory, where ancient ones left their deepest songs." They climbed steadily through the morning, following streams that ran uphill in defiance of gravity and crossing bridges woven from vines that sang in harmonious chords when the wind touched them. As they ascended, the very quality of light seemed to change, becoming richer, more alive. Finally, they emerged into a vast circular clearing, dominated by structures that took Marcus's breath away. At first glance, they appeared to be massive trees, but closer inspection revealed them to be buildings, grown rather than built spiraling towers of living wood and crystalline formations that pulsed with internal light. At the center stood a structure that was clearly a temple, its walls covered in patterns that shifted and flowed like liquid light. "The first settlement," Zara whispered, "where sky song and forest song first learned to dance together." Marcus stared at the magnificent structures, his trader's eye recognizing technology far beyond anything in the galactic databases. "Zara, these aren't just buildings. They're organic computers, living data storage systems. Your ancestors didn't just work with nature. They merged technology with biology in ways that my people can't even imagine." Zara led him toward the central temple, her bare feet making no sound on the moss-covered stones. "Ancient ones say great knowledge sleeps here, waiting for one who can bridge two worlds to wake it." Inside the temple, the walls were covered with flowing script that seemed to write and rewrite itself continuously. Marcus recognized mathematical formulas, star charts, and what looked like genetic codes, all rendered in bioluminescent text that pulsed with life. "It's a library," he breathed. "A living library that updates itself." Zara placed her hands on one of the walls, and the symbols responded, flowing toward her touch and brightening. Marcus placed hands beside Zara's. Maybe ancient knowledge recognizes Bridge Builder. Marcus hesitated for only a moment before pressing his palms against the warm, living surface next to hers. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The temple filled with light as information flowed directly into their minds. Not just data, but understanding. The ancient Verdanians hadn't been primitive people living in harmony with nature. They had been master biotechnicians who had transcended the need for mechanical technology by learning to work with life itself. Their ships were grown, not built, capable of traveling between stars while maintaining perfect ecosystems within. Their living hulls. Their cities were organisms. Their computers were forests. Their vehicles were creatures bred for specific purposes. But the knowledge came with a cost. As the information flowed between them, Marcus felt Zara's emotions as if they were his own, her deep love for her world, her growing feelings for him, and underneath it all, a profound loneliness that had driven her to learn the sky languages, in hopes that someday someone would come who could understand both her world and the stars beyond. When the vision ended, they found themselves kneeling on the temple floor, their hands still pressed to the wall, fingers intertwined. Zara's eyes were bright with tears that caught the bioluminescent light and scattered it like prisms. "Now, Marcus knows," she whispered. Ancient ones left knowledge for one who could bring skyways and forestways together. But Zara fears... Fears what? Marcus asked gently, using his free hand to wipe the tears from her cheek. Fears that if sky travel learns to grow ships like ancient ones, he will take knowledge to stars and forget Forest Daughter who showed him the way. Marcus's heart clenched at the pain in her voice. "Zara, look at me." He waited until her luminous eyes met his. "I could never forget you. In 3 days, you've shown me wonders I didn't know existed. You've made me understand that everything I thought I knew about life and technology, was just scratching the surface. But Marcus has life among stars, places to go, people who wait for Sky Trader's return. My life among the stars was empty, Marcus said, surprised by the truth of it. I was just moving from port to port, buying and selling, never really connecting with anyone or anything. But here, with you. He cupped her face in his hands, feeling the warm pulse of her bioluminescence against his palms. Here, I feel alive for the first time in years. Zara leaned into his touch, her patterns brightening to match the rhythm of his heartbeat. Zara feels same. Before Marcus fell from Sky, each day was like previous day. Beautiful, peaceful, but incomplete. Like forest song missing important harmony. They were so close now that Marcus could feel her breath on his face, could see the complex patterns of light that flowed just beneath her skin. The air around them seemed charged with possibility, with the same energy that had filled the temple during their shared vision. Zara, he whispered, her name like a prayer on his lips. She answered by closing the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that sent waves of light cascading across her skin. Marcus felt the connection they'd forged deepen and strengthen, becoming something that transcended the merely physical. Through their joined consciousness, he experienced her wonder at his gentleness, her joy at finding someone who could understand both her world and his own. When they finally broke apart, both were glowing, not just Zara with her natural bioluminescence, but Marcus as well, his skin showing faint patterns of light where they had touched. The connection grows, Zara said, her voice filled with awe. Ancient knowledge accepts bridge builder, begins transformation. Marcus looked down at his hands, seeing the delicate traceries of light that now decorated his skin. What does this mean? Means Marcus can now hear deeper forest songs and help grow ships that sail between stars while keeping forest heart alive. Zara's eyes sparkled with excitement. But also means choice must be made. Connection changes Sky Traveler, makes him part of forest song. Cannot undo. Marcus thought of his old life, the loneliness, the endless cycles of trade and travel that led nowhere, the growing emptiness that had driven him to take increasingly dangerous runs to increasingly remote worlds. Then he looked at Zara, at the living temple around them, at the possibility of becoming part of something larger and more beautiful than he had ever imagined. I've been looking for home my whole life, he said. I never realized I'd have to crash land on an alien world to find it. Zara's smile was radiant as she took his glowing hands in hers. Then Marcus will stay? Will learn forest ways, help, grow new ships that carry forest song to other worlds? I'll stay, Marcus said, meaning it with every fiber of his being. Though I have to warn you, I'm probably going to be a terrible student. I can barely keep a houseplant alive, let alone grow a starship. Zara laughed, the sound echoing through the temple and seeming to wake new patterns of light in the walls around them. Zara will teach, Forest will guide. And maybe, someday, we sail to stars together in ship that grows from our joined songs. As they sealed their commitment with another kiss, the temple around them pulsed with approving light, and Marcus knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The crash that had brought him to Verdania hadn't been an accident, it had been destiny, bringing together two halves of a harmony that could reshape the galaxy's understanding of life itself. Outside the temple, the first storm clouds he'd seen since arriving on Verdania were gathering on the horizon. Change was coming to their peaceful world, but for now, in this moment of perfect connection, Marcus could only think of the incredible woman in his arms and the amazing future they would build together. The ancient knowledge sang in their joined consciousness, showing them visions of bioships that could carry forest ecosystems to dead worlds, bringing life to the lifeless and hope to the hopeless. It would be their gift to the galaxy, a new way of living among the stars that honored both technology and nature, progress and harmony. In the growing twilight, as they prepared to return to their camp, neither Marcus nor Zara noticed the small, distant pintrail high in Verdania's atmosphere, signature of a ship entering orbit, drawn by the same distress beacon it had been broadcasting since Marcus's crash 3 days ago.